After the traumatic ending of episode 5, this one feels like a much needed change of pace. A chance for the characters and the viewers to catch their breath, at least until the ending where it all kicks off again. There's a lot more lush scenery and absolutely no infected. Clearly there's not going to be big action scenes every single week, which will frustrate a lot of viewers, but if you want that sort of thing you can just play the game. Joel's age is the recurring theme this week. Normally it's not obvious, as Pedro Pascal is not that much older than I am, so still very much in the prime of his life. But the character he's playing is meant to be a lot older, as he had a teenage daughter 20 years ago. Here that starts to be a problem, as Joel begins to worry that he might be getting too old to take care of Ellie anymore, and tries to palm her off onto his brother. There are some wonderfully acted scenes here. Pedro Pascal is usually quite emotionally restrained in this show, but in the scenes between Joel and Tommy, he really lets himself pour out everything that he's been holding in for so long, and it's a revelation. Similarly, the confrontation between Joel and Ellie is also extremely cathartic, really bringing out the subtext of Ellie taking the place of Joel's daughter. It's very similar to how it played out in the game, but it worked there and it works here. The difference in pacing between the show and the game are even more apparent here, as a lot of action sequences have been skipped. The game has a long sequence at the dam, but in the show they just say, "Oh look, there's a dam," and then they move on. And anyone who's played the game will get shivers as they see Joel and Ellie enter the university, as it takes a long time to fight your way out of there through the hordes of infected and armies of human raiders, before Joel inevitably gets injured. Here that confrontation is pared down to the bare minimum, as Joel fights just one guy and still ends up just as badly injured as he did in the game. Which makes sense if they're trying to portray him as a realistic guy in his late 50s and not a one-man army, but it does make you wonder how they will handle the final episode. There are several familiar faces from cult TV shows in this episode. It was great to see Elaine Miles in the opening scene. She played Marilyn in Northern Exposure, and her distinctive voice was instantly recognisable. No surprise that she would survive the apocalypse, as you got the impression that Marilyn could survive the heat death of the universe. Also present is Rutina Wesley as Maria, who is better known as the only woman in the cast of True Blood who never took her clothes off. And she still has a career, so maybe that was the right decision after all. I should also mention how they've recreated the town of Jackson for the games. It's not in part 1, but you do get to spend quite a lot of time there in part 2. And it's been recreated superbly as this idyllic, post-apocalyptic little town. Given the choice, I'd much rather live there than any of the settlements in the Walking Dead universe, mainly because they do keep being overrun by zombies. So the episode ends on a big cliffhanger, with Joel on the brink of death. Will he survive, or did he have to go off and film The Mandalorian? Find out next week, unless I decide to start reviewing every episode of The Mandalorian instead. Either way, I'll definitely be talking about a show in which Pedro Pascal goes on a road trip with a weird looking tiny little creature. See you next week.